I was folding laundry on a Sunday afternoon when the text came through. You know how some moments just stick with you. The smell of fabric softener, the way the light hit the bedroom wall, the sound of my phone buzzing against the dresser. Hey babe, gonna be late tonight. Lisa needs help moving some stuff, you understand, right? I stared at the screen, holding one of David's shirts in my hands. Lisa, always Lisa. For 6 months, it had been Lisa this, Lisa that. Lisa needed emotional support after her breakup. Lisa needed help with her car. Lisa needed someone to talk to at midnight. I set the phone down and continued folding. The thing is, I did understand. I understood perfectly. Most women would have started a fight by now, would have demanded he choose. But I've always been the type to step back and observe, to think before I react. And what I observed was this. David Parker, my boyfriend of 8 months, was keeping me as his safety net while he figured out if he wanted to get back together with his ex. I picked up my phone and typed back, "Of course, take your time." 3 little words that he probably read as compliance. The perfect girlfriend response. But I wasn't being perfect. I was being strategic. That evening, I made myself tea and settled into my reading chair. The signs had been there for weeks. The way he'd grown distant after Lisa's breakup, how he'd stopped making long-term plans, the careful way he'd started saying, "if we're still together," instead of "when." David came home at nearly midnight, smelling like Lisa's vanilla perfume. I pretended to be asleep, listening as he moved quietly through the apartment, settling into bed beside me. "Clara?" he whispered. I kept my breathing steady. He kissed my shoulder. Such a gentle gesture from someone who was slowly breaking my heart. The thing is, I don't think he even realized he was doing it. David isn't cruel, just weak. He wants everyone happy, wants to avoid difficult conversations. But I was done being anyone's backup plan. The next morning, I made coffee for 2 like always. When he shuffled into the kitchen, I was already dressed and ready. "You're up early," he said, accepting the mug I offered. "Couldn't sleep." I leaned against the counter watching him. "How was Lisa last night?" Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe. "Yeah, she's having a rough time. The breakup really messed with her head. She's lucky to have someone who cares so much." David nodded but wouldn't meet my eyes. "She's been my friend since college. I can't abandon her when she needs support." "Of course not." I gathered my purse. "I should get going. Early meeting today." I kissed his cheek and headed for the door, but I paused with my hand on the handle. "David." "Yeah?" "I want you to know that I understand what's happening here." The colour drained from his face. "Clara, I'm not angry. I'm not going to scream or cry or demand explanations. I just want you to know that I see what's going on." He opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he say? We both knew I was right. "I'll talk to you later," I said, and left. The drive to work gave me time to think, to plan. Because here's the thing about being the understanding girlfriend. People take you for granted. They assume you'll wait around forever while they figure out what they really want. David thought he had all the time in the world to choose between Lisa and me. He thought wrong. I work in event planning for a high-end catering company. My office is in the arts district, in a converted warehouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick. I love my job, love the creativity, the problem-solving, the way every event is like putting together a complex puzzle. And I'm good at it. Really good. Which is why, when I walked into the office that morning and saw Adrian Fletcher setting up his laptop at the conference table, I knew exactly what was happening. Adrian runs a boutique PR firm that specialises in luxury brands. We'd worked together on several events over the past year, and he'd been dropping hints about poaching me for months. Subtle at first, comments about how much he valued my work, questions about my career goals. "Clara," he said, looking up from his computer, "I hope you don't mind me setting up early." Adrian is one of those men who manages to be both devastatingly handsome and completely professional. Tall, dark hair starting to silver at the temples. The kind of confidence that comes from building something successful from nothing. Not at all, I said, settling across from him. Actually, I'm glad you're here. I've been thinking about our conversation last month. Have you now? His smile was carefully neutral, but I caught the spark of interest in his eyes. The position you mentioned, head of client relations, is it still available? It is. He leaned back, studying me. May I ask what changed your mind? I considered how much to tell him. Adrian and I have always had an easy working relationship built on mutual respect. He's never been anything but professional, but there's been an undercurrent there, an awareness we've both carefully avoided acknowledging. Let's just say my current situation has become less anchored than it was before. He nodded slowly. The offer stands. Actually, it's improved since we last spoke. There's a new client, a tech startup about to go public. High-profile work, significant travel, substantial autonomy. And the salary? He named a figure that was nearly double what I was currently making. I managed to keep my expression neutral, but inside I was smiling. Because here's what David doesn't understand about me. I've never needed anyone to take care of me. I've been self-sufficient since I was 18, building my career, creating a life I'm proud of. I chose to build something with him, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. Because I thought he was worth the investment. But investments have to show returns, don't they? When would you need an answer? Take your time, though I should mention we're announcing the position next week, and I prefer someone in place before the Reynolds campaign launches in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Enough time to transition my projects, enough time to make sure David understood exactly what he was losing. I'll let you know by Friday, I said. When I got home that evening, to my own apartment, which suddenly felt like a sanctuary, I found a voicemail from David. Hey babe, I know this morning was weird. I think we should talk. I'm making dinner tonight if you want to come over. That pasta thing you like, call me back. I deleted the message without calling back. Instead, I opened my laptop and researched Fletcher & Associates. Their client list was impressive. Luxury hotels, high-end fashion brands, tech companies preparing for IPOs. The kind of work that would challenge me, use all my skills and then some. My phone buzzed with another text. Clara, everything okay? You didn't call back. I stared at the message, then typed, everything's fine, just busy tonight, talk tomorrow. Short, polite, distant, let him wonder for once. Because here's what I'd realised. I didn't want to fight for someone who wasn't sure he wanted to be with me. I didn't want to compete with Lisa for David's attention. I didn't want to spend years wondering when the next crisis would pull him away. I wanted someone who chose me clearly, definitively, without reservation. That night, I made myself a proper dinner and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving. I put on music, lit candles, and reminded myself what it felt like to enjoy my own company. My phone rang around 9, David's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to Adrian Fletcher. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone pay for hurting you. Sometimes it's about showing them exactly what they lost when they chose someone else. Tuesday morning brought 3 missed calls from David and a bouquet of white roses delivered to my office. The card read, Sorry, I've been distant. Let me make it up to you. D. I handed the flowers to my assistant, Emma. Put these in the break room, would you? Emma raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She's worked with me long enough to read my moods. The thing about David's apology flowers was their timing. He'd sent them after I didn't answer his calls, after I'd been politely distant for exactly 1 day, which told me everything I needed to know about how he viewed our relationship. As long as I was available and accommodating, he could take me for granted. The moment I pulled back, suddenly he was sending flowers, Too little, too late. I spent the morning reviewing contracts for the Harrison wedding, a society affair that would be featured in 3 different magazines. Detail work that usually absorbed my complete attention, but today my mind kept wandering to the email I drafted to Adrian. Around noon, Rebecca knocked on my office door. Got a minute? Rebecca Walsh has been my boss for 3 years, and she's become something of a mentor. Sharp, successful, the kind of woman who built her business from scratch and never apologizes for her ambition. Adrian Fletcher stopped by earlier, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. He mentioned you two had discussed a position at his firm. Here it was. I'd been expecting this conversation. We did. Yesterday, actually. And? I'm considering it. Rebecca studied me for a long moment. You know, I don't want to lose you, Clara. You're the best event coordinator I've ever worked with. But I also know a good opportunity when I see one. This surprised me. You think I should take it? I think you should do what's right for you. But I also think you should know that Fletcher and Associates isn't just any PR firm. They're the kind of company that can set you up for life if you play your cards right. She leaned forward. Adrian Fletcher is brilliant, by the way, and single, in case you were wondering. I felt heat creep up my neck. Rebecca, I'm just saying, you've been dating that marketing guy for 8 months? And from what I can tell, he's not exactly setting the world on fire with his commitment level. Sometimes I forgot how observant Rebecca was. It's complicated. Honey, when a man wants to be with you, it's not complicated. It's simple. She stood to leave. Whatever you decide about the job, just make sure you're choosing what you want, not what's convenient. After she left, I sat staring at my computer screen. Rebecca was right, of course. David had been making things complicated because complexity gave him permission to avoid making real decisions. My phone buzzed. Another text from David. Did you get the flowers? Can we please talk tonight? I was about to set the phone aside when another message came through, this one from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Clara, this is Lisa. David gave me your number. I was hoping we could meet for coffee. There are some things I think you should know. Now that was interesting. I stared at the message for a full minute. This could be a trap, of course. Lisa trying to size up the competition, or worse, trying to manipulate the situation in her favour. But it could also be exactly what it appeared to be. Someone trying to give me information I needed. When and where? I typed back. Tomorrow, 2 p.m, Cafe Luna on 5th Street. I'll be there. The rest of the day passed slowly. I found myself analysing every interaction I'd had with David over the past few months, looking for clues I'd missed. The way he'd started checking his phone more frequently during our dates. How he'd grown vague about his weekend plans. The night last month when he'd claimed to be working late, but his office building had been dark when I'd driven past. I'd noticed all of these things, but I'd chosen to give him the benefit of the doubt. Because that's what you do when you care about someone, right? You trust them until they give you a reason not to. Well, now I had reasons. That evening, David showed up in my apartment unannounced. I heard his key in the lock. I'd given him one 3 months ago, back when I'd thought we were building something real. Clara? He called. I was in the kitchen making dinner for one. In here! He appeared in the doorway looking contrite and handsome in his charcoal suit. The same suit he'd worn to my company Christmas party, where he'd charmed Rebecca and made me believe we had a future together. You didn't return my calls. I've been busy. I didn't look up from the vegetables I was chopping. Are you angry about Sunday night? Because I told you Lisa was having a hard time. Yes, you mentioned that. I set down the knife and finally looked at him. David, do you think I'm stupid? The question clearly caught him off guard. What? No, of course not. Why would you ask that? Because you're treating me like I am, like I can't see what's happening here. His face went through several expressions: confusion, guilt, something that might have been panic. Clara, I don't know what you think is happening, but I think you're trying to have it both ways. You want to keep me around in case things don't work out with Lisa, but you also want the freedom to explore getting back together with her. Silence, long enough to confirm everything I'd suspected. It's not like that, he said finally. Isn't it? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I used to find endearing. Now it just looked like what it was, a man trying to buy time while he figured out what to say. Lisa and I have history. I know. And she's going through something really difficult right now. I know that too, and I can't just abandon her when she needs support. No one's asking you to abandon her, David. I'm asking you to be honest with me about what you want. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Because he couldn't be honest, could he? He couldn't tell me he was torn between us without admitting he'd been emotionally cheating. He couldn't tell me he was confused without acknowledging that he'd been stringing me along. I want to be with you, he said finally. But, another long pause. But I also can't just turn my back on someone I care about. Someone you used to love, you mean? Clara. Someone you might still love. He looked at me with something like desperation. I don't know, okay? I don't know what I feel about Lisa, but I know I care about you and I don't want to lose you. There it was. Finally. The truth. You don't want to lose me, I repeated. But you're not sure you want to keep me either. That's not fair. Isn't it? I moved to the counter, putting distance between us. David, I'm not going to wait around while you figure out your feelings. I'm not going to compete with Lisa for your attention. Either you want to be with me, or you don't. It really is that simple. But it's not simple. It is for me. I met his eyes. I know what I want. I want someone who chooses me without hesitation, who doesn't need to weigh his options or consider his alternatives. If that's not you, then we should end this now. The silence stretched between us. I could see him thinking, calculating, trying to find a way to keep both doors open. I need time, he said finally. No. The word came out more firmly than I'd expected. You've had 8 months. If you needed more time, you should have told me that before we got serious. Clara, please. I'm done, David. We're done. He stared at me like he couldn't quite process what I'd said. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. But the flowers. I thought we could work this out. The flowers were lovely, but they were also an attempt to smooth things over without actually addressing the problem. I walked to the front door and held it open. I think you should go. He didn't move. What about Lisa? The question hung in the air between us. What about Lisa indeed? What about her? If I choose her, if I decide to try again with her, will you at least understand why? I looked at him standing in my kitchen, asking for my blessing to pursue his ex-girlfriend. The audacity of it should have made me angry, but instead I felt something like pity. David, you don't need my permission to choose Lisa, you just need to own the choice. He left then, finally, but not before turning back at the door. This doesn't have to be over, Clara. You don't have to throw away what we have. What we have, I said quietly, is you keeping me as your backup plan while you decide if you want someone else more. I'd rather have nothing than that. After he left, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. Adrian's business card was tucked into my planner, and I stared at it for a long moment before opening a new email. Adrian, I typed, I'm very interested in the position we discussed. When would be a good time to talk details? I hit send before I could second-guess myself. His reply came back within an hour. How about dinner tomorrow night? I know a place. Wednesday afternoon at Café Luna, I spotted Lisa immediately. She was exactly what I'd expected. Petite, blonde, the kind of delicate beauty that made men want to protect her. She was fidgeting with her coffee cup, checking her phone every few seconds. I approached her table with deliberate calm. Lisa? Clara, thank you for coming. She gestured to the chair across from her. I wasn't sure you would. I sat down and studied her. Up close, she looked tired. Dark circles under carefully applied concealer. The kind of brittle composure that comes from holding yourself together by sheer will. You said there were things I should know. Lisa took a shaky breath. I know you and David broke up last night. He called me pretty upset. Of course he had. And I think you deserve to know the truth about what's been happening. I waited, letting the silence stretch. Sometimes people need space to confess. David and I didn't break up 6 months ago, she said finally. We were on a break. His idea because he said he needed to figure out what he wanted. Interesting. David had told me they'd broken up definitively. Go on. He met you during our break. When I found out, I didn't handle it well. I told him he had to choose, me or you. That's when we officially broke up. But you've been trying to get him back? Yes. She looked down at her hands. I've been manipulating the situation, creating emergencies, reasons for him to help me, making him feel guilty about our history. This was more honesty than I'd expected. Why are you telling me this? Lisa met my eyes. Because I realised something last night when he called. He was more upset about losing you than he ever was about our actual breakup. And that made me understand that I've been fighting for someone who doesn't really want to be with me anymore. She pulled out her phone and showed me a text thread. David's messages to her over the past few weeks. Caring but distant, the tone you'd use with a troubled friend rather than someone you loved. I convinced myself he was just being cautious because of you, but reading these again, she shook her head. He's been trying to let me down easy for months. I just wouldn't listen. I sipped my coffee, processing this information. So, what do you want from me? I want to stop. Lisa's voice was quiet but firm. I want to stop trying to get him back, stop creating drama, stop being the reason his relationships don't work. That's very mature of you. It's also selfish. She gave me a wry smile. I don't want to be the crazy ex-girlfriend anymore. It's exhausting, and it's not who I want to be. I found myself liking her despite everything. What will you tell David? That I'm moving to Portland. My sister lives there and she's been asking me to come work with her. It's a good opportunity and it'll give David space to figure out what he really wants without me interfering. Are you actually moving to Portland? I am now. She finished her coffee. Clara, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you going to take him back? If he comes to you and says he wants to try again? I considered the question. 24 hours ago, I might have said yes. David's confusion wasn't entirely his fault. Lisa had been actively sabotaging our relationship. But his weakness in handling it, his inability to be direct with either of us, that was on him. No, I said. I don't think I am. Lisa nodded slowly. Good. You deserve someone who doesn't need to lose you to realise what he has. After she left, I sat in the cafe for another hour thinking. Lisa's honesty had been unexpected, but it didn't change the fundamental problem. David had let himself be manipulated instead of being clear about his boundaries. He'd kept me in limbo rather than having difficult conversations. That wasn't the kind of man I wanted to build a life with. I was walking back to my office when my phone rang. Adrian's name on the screen. I hope you don't mind me calling, he said. I wanted to confirm our dinner plans. Not at all. I was just thinking about our conversation yesterday. Second thoughts? Quite the opposite. I'm more interested than ever. There was a pause. May I ask what changed? I considered how to answer. Let's just say I had a very enlightening conversation this afternoon. It reminded me that I value directness in both personal and professional relationships. I see. Well, I can certainly promise you directness. Shall I pick you up at 7? I'll meet you there. Where did you have in mind? Chez Laurent. Do you know it? I did. It was the kind of restaurant where business deals were made over wine that cost more than most people's rent. The kind of place David had never taken me, claiming it was too fancy for his taste. Perfect. I'll see you at 7. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. I updated my portfolio, researched Adrian's recent campaigns, and tried on 3 different outfits before settling on a black dress that was professional enough for a business dinner, but elegant enough to remind Adrian that I was a woman worth pursuing. Because, let's be honest, this wasn't just about the job anymore. Chez Laurent was exactly as sophisticated as I'd expected. Soft lighting, discreet service, the kind of ambience that made every conversation feel important. Adrian was waiting at a corner table, and he stood when he saw me approach. Clara, you look beautiful. Thank you. I let him seat me, noting the way other women in the restaurant glanced at him. Adrian Fletcher was definitely the kind of man who drew attention. I took the liberty of ordering wine. I hope you don't mind. Not at all. The wine was excellent, of course. Everything about Adrian was polished, curated, intentional. So, he said once we'd ordered, tell me about this enlightening conversation. I gave him the abbreviated version. David's confusion, Lisa's manipulation, my decision to end things definitively. I'm sorry, Adrian said when I finished. That must have been difficult. Actually, it was liberating. I've spent 8 months making excuses for someone else's inability to make decisions. I'm done with that. Adrian nodded thoughtfully. You know, I've noticed something about you over the past year we've worked together. What's that? You never settle, whether it's finding the perfect venue or coordinating impossible schedules, you always find a way to get exactly what you want. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? In business, it's invaluable. In personal life? He paused, considering. I imagine it means you won't accept anything less than what you deserve. Our food arrived, giving me time to think about his words. He was right, of course. I had high standards, and I'd been compromising them for David. Tell me about the position, I said. Adrian's face lit up as he described the role. It was everything he'd mentioned and more. International travel, high-profile clients, the kind of work that would challenge every skill I had and develop new ones. The salary we discussed is just the starting point, he said. There's significant room for growth, both financially and professionally. Within 2 years, you could be running your own division. What's the catch? He laughed. Direct, as always. The catch is that it's demanding work, long hours, high pressure, clients who expect perfection. Not everyone can handle it. But you think I can. I know you can. His gaze was steady, confident. The question is whether you want to. I thought about my current job, about the comfortable routine I'd fallen into, about how I'd been playing it safe in every aspect of my life. I want to, I said. Excellent. I'll have my lawyer draw up the contract tomorrow. He raised his wineglass. To new beginnings. We clinked glasses, and I felt a flutter of excitement that had nothing to do with the wine. As we were finishing dessert, Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Everything okay? I asked. Just a client emergency. Nothing that can't wait until morning. He set the phone aside. I'm sorry, I try not to let work interfere with personal time. Personal time? This started as a business dinner, Clara, but I think we both know it's become something else. The honesty was refreshing after months of David's careful ambiguity. You're very direct. I told you I would be. I'm attracted to you, and I have been for months. I've stayed professional because I knew you were in a relationship, but now... He shrugged elegantly. Now, you're not. No, I said. I'm not. He signalled for the check. Would you like to continue this conversation somewhere more private? I studied his face, the confidence, the intelligence, the complete absence of uncertainty that had defined my relationship with David. This was a man who knew what he wanted and wasn't afraid to pursue it. I would, I said, sour. As we left the restaurant, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. I looked different somehow, more alive, more like myself than I had in months. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Can we please talk? I made a mistake. I deleted it without reading it twice, because some mistakes can't be undone, and some chances don't come twice. David had had 8 months to choose me. Tonight, I was choosing someone who had chosen me first. 3 weeks later, I was in Adrian's penthouse office, finalising details for the tech startup's launch party, when Emma called. Clara, David's here. He's asking to see you and he won't leave. I glanced at Adrian, who was reviewing seating charts across the mahogany conference table. We'd been working closely together since I'd accepted his offer, and the professional chemistry had seamlessly blended with something more personal. Tell him I'm in a meeting, I said. I did. He said he'll wait. Adrian looked up from the charts. Problem? Ex-boyfriend drama, nothing I can't handle. Want me to call security? The offer was tempting, but I had a better idea. Actually, would you mind coming with me? I think it's time David met my new business partner. Adrian's smile was sharp. It would be my pleasure. 20 minutes later, we walked into my old office building together. Adrian carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that made people step aside in elevators. His custom-tailored suit and platinum watch spoke of success in a language David would understand perfectly. David was pacing in the reception area, looking haggard. He'd lost weight, and his usually perfect hair was dishevelled. When he saw me, relief flooded his face. Clara, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I've been busy. I kept my tone neutral, professional. David, this is Adrian Fletcher. Adrian, David Parker. The two men shook hands, Adrian's grip firm and confident, David's uncertain. You could see David taking in the expensive suit, the watch, the way Adrian stood slightly closer to me than strictly necessary. Parker, Adrian said smoothly, Clara's mentioned you. David's eyes darted between us. I need to talk to Clara. Alone. Actually, I said, anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Adrian. We're business partners now. Business partners? David's voice cracked slightly. I've taken a position with Fletcher and Associates. We're launching a new division together. David stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. But your job here, you love your job here. I loved the job I had here, but I found something better. The double meaning wasn't lost on anyone in the room. David's face went pale. Can we please just talk? He said. 5 minutes. I looked at Adrian, who nodded almost imperceptibly. 5 minutes, I agreed. We'll be in conference room B. The small conference room felt cramped with David's nervous energy filling it. He closed the door and immediately launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech. I made the biggest mistake of my life letting you go. Lisa's moving to Portland. She told me about your conversation. She said she was the one manipulating everything, that none of it was real. I leaned against the table, arms crossed. And I realised I've been an idiot. I was so worried about making the wrong choice that I almost lost the best thing that ever happened to me. You did lose it, David, but it doesn't have to stay that way. He stepped closer. We can start over. We can... No. The word was final. We can't. But why? If Lisa was manipulating the situation, if none of it was my fault. It wasn't entirely your fault, I agreed, but your response to it was. You kept me in limbo for months, David. You let me wonder where I stood while you figured out your feelings. I was confused. You were selfish. My voice remained calm, matter of fact. You wanted to keep your options open. You wanted to see if the grass was greener with Lisa while making sure I'd still be here if it wasn't. He opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to deflate. Maybe you're right. But I know what I want now. I choose you, Clara. I choose us. I studied his face. The desperation, the genuine regret, the love I'd once thought would be enough. You're 3 weeks too late. What do you mean? I mean, I've moved on, in every sense of the word. Understanding dawned in his eyes as he glanced toward the door where Adrian was waiting. You're with him. I'm with someone who knew what he wanted from the moment he met me, someone who didn't need to lose me to realize my value. David's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally, a desperate kind of bargaining. How long have you known him? A few weeks? Clara, we had 8 months together. That has to count for something. It does count. It counts as 8 months of learning that I deserve better than someone who treats me like a consolation prize. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. I really screwed this up, didn't I? Yeah, I said gently. You did. Is there any chance, any possibility that you might change your mind? I thought about lying, about softening the blow. But David deserved honesty, even if it hurt. No, there isn't. He nodded slowly, finally accepting what I'd been trying to tell him. Does he make you happy? The question surprised me with its sincerity. He does. Very happy. Good. David moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to choose you when it mattered. After he left, I sat in the empty conference room for a few minutes, processing the end of that chapter of my life. When I emerged, Adrian was waiting in the reception area, scrolling through his phone. How did it go? He asked. It went well. Clean break, no loose ends. He studied my face. Any regrets? None. And I meant it. As we walked to his car, Adrian took my hand. I have something to show you, he said. 20 minutes later, we were standing in a gleaming office space in the financial district. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and everything smelled like new carpet and fresh paint. What is this? Your office, Adrian said. Well, our office. The new headquarters for Fletcher and Associates Events Division. I walked to the windows, looking out over the city I'd lived in my whole life, but was seeing with new eyes. It's beautiful. There's more. He led me to a smaller office off the main space. The nameplate on the door read, Clara Mitchell, Director of Client Relations. I stared at the nameplate, at this tangible proof that my life had completely transformed in less than a month. I had them rush the nameplate, Adrian said. I wanted you to see it. I turned to face him. Why are you doing all this? Because you're brilliant at what you do. Because you deserve to be valued and challenged and rewarded for your talents. And, he stepped closer, and because I'm falling in love with you, and I want to build something amazing together, both professionally and personally. His honesty was breathtaking after months of David's uncertainty. You're very sure of yourself. I'm sure of us. His hands came up to frame my face. Question is, are you... I thought about David probably driving home alone to process the end of our relationship. I thought about Lisa starting fresh in Portland. I thought about the woman I'd been just a month ago, accommodating, patient, willing to accept less than I deserved. I'm sure, I said. He kissed me then, soft and certain, and I felt something click into place. This was what it felt like to be chosen completely, without hesitation or reservation. 6 months later, I was standing in this same office, now fully furnished and bustling with activity, when Emma, my new assistant, brought me a wedding invitation. "David Parker," she said, reading the name. "Should I RSVP?" I glanced at the elegant cardstock. David and Lisa back together after all, planning a summer wedding. "Send a gift," I said. "Something nice from the registry." "That's very generous of you." I smiled, thinking of the Tiffany engagement ring Adrian had presented me with just last weekend. The wedding we were planning for next spring, the life we were building together. I can afford to be generous. Because here's the thing about getting everything you never knew you wanted. It makes you realize how much time you wasted settling for less. That David thought I'd wait for him while he figured out what he wanted. Instead, I found someone who already knew. And we lived happily ever after.